our principal who gave us immense support for conducting this program. Lord, we thank you for providing us a very knowledgeable resource person today. Bless our convener, coordinator, organizing committee, and respected professors and our technical team for their strong uphold. Lord, make this program a very useful for all the faculties and research scholars from various colleges. Lord, be with us. Make this day a useful for all of us. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance and wisdom and support throughout this session. Guide our hearts, our minds, the spirit of fairness. We ask all this in the precious name of Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Miss Vansi, for invoking the Lord's presence. Billy Graham said, "The Bible is the source of ultimate truth, wisdom, and guidance for all humanity." I now invite Dr. T. Jude Livingston to read the Word of God.
For Bible reading, the verses are taken from Matthew 5, verses 14 to 16. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Here ends the lesson.
Thanks, Dr. Jude, for the precious Word of God. Welcoming is an expression of love, kindness, and gratitude. May I now invite Dr. Sophia Persis to deliver the welcome address.
Invoking the presence of our Lord God Almighty was given as a brand new day. I proceed to welcome every one of you assembled in the online portal for the third day faculty development program. It is my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to our Honorable Secretary of our college, Mr. S. Premkumar Raj Singh, who is glad enough to watch multifarious activities performed for the welfare of the staff and student community. My gracious welcome to our principal in charge, Dr. G.B. Esther Ratnakumari, who constantly encourages us to conduct variety programs. We, the management, principal, and organizers, are delighted to offer the most hospitable welcome to our resourceful professor, Dr. Chinmay Murali, Assistant Professor and Research Supervisor, Department of English, Sanatana Dharma College, Alappuzha, Kerala. As his research interests include health humanities, literature, and graphic medicine, we are eager to receive your knowledge on medical humanities, sir. My cordial welcome to the convener of Faculty Development Program, Dr. M. Beulah Hemalata, Assistant Professor and Research Guide, Coordinator, Dr. T. Jude Livingston, Assistant Professor and PG Head, Organizing Secretaries, Dr. Y. Premila Anbarasi, and Dr. Y. Beristella, Assistant Professors and Research Guides. Heartfelt welcome to staff and scholars awaiting eagerly to expand the horizon of transformative learning journey. Hearty welcome to Dr. Chinmay Murali to our NMCP online portal.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for your warm words. We have come to the central part of the session. Here we have Dr. Chinmay Murali with us to share his knowledge and expertise. Sir, the platform is yours now.
Okay, thank you. So is the PPT visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So shall we begin?
Okay, sir, we are ready.
Okay. Okay. So a very good morning, everybody. At the outset, I would like to thank the Department of English, Nazareth Margocious College, and Dr. Gluha Hemalata, the coordinator of this FDP, for the kind invite. My lecture titled Health Humanities is an attempt to introduce to you the interdisciplinary field of health humanities. In this lecture, I shall be approaching health humanities both as a discipline and as a discourse. And as some of you might have already noticed, uh, please hold on a second. Yes, as some of you might have already noticed, I have given the title of this particular lecture as Health Humanities instead of Medical Humanities, which is supposedly the topic of my lecture. This is rather a deliberate choice, and I would explain in my lecture why I have chosen the term health humanities instead of medical humanities as the title of my lecture. And without further ado, let's dive into the discussion. Yes, here is a cursory overview of the central tenets the central themes that will be discussed in my presentation. We will start off with a bit of history, tracing the development of health humanities or medical humanities as a field historically. And then I shall make an attempt to define the field of health humanities. And it is also important to make a distinction between health humanities and medical humanities, although they are two very similar discourses. So we will be doing that in the third part of the presentation. Uh, the next part of the presentation will examine some of the key words and concepts in the field of health humanities, which will be followed by a discussion of some of the research methods and possibilities in health humanities. The final part of the presentation shall focus on very recently emerged subfield of health humanities called graphic medicine. So this is the way in which I have structured my presentation. I hope the slides are clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So we shall proceed to the next slide. So I would like to formally begin the discussion by invoking a quote from none other than Virginia Woolf. And this is a quote which is taken from an essay titled On Being Ill, authored by Woolf in the year 1925. Interestingly, this essay was published immediately after Woolf experiencing a nervous breakdown. As you might know, she was mentally ill throughout her life, and which eventually culminated in her suicide at a very young age. And I found this quote particularly interesting because this quote by Woolf touches upon some of the key concerns of the field of both health humanities and medical humanities. Now, let us pay attention to the quote. Uh, I quote, "There is, let us confess it, an illness is the great confessional, a childlike, a childish outspokenness in illness. Things are said, truths blurted out, which the cautious respectability of health conceals." Unquote. So, as you can see here, this quote from Woolf is primarily about the dichotomy between health and illness. Here, as you can see, Woolf calls illness childish and outspoken. And for Woolf, health, on the other hand, conceals truth. In fact, health humanities is all about this childish outspokenness of illness and how health conceals the truth. As a discipline, health humanities is primarily interested in illness and, of course, health. And it looks at both illness and health from diverse disciplinary perspectives, including that of literature, philosophy, psychology, history, and so on. Sorry, is there a problem?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay,
You continue,
I
sir.
thought there was a disturbance. Okay, so we shall continue. Now let us move on to the origins of health humanities as a discipline. What are the antecedents of health humanities or medical humanities? We'll be looking at that particular aspect of health humanities, looking at health humanities historically. Well, as I mentioned earlier, health humanities is a relatively new term that signifies a new field. But it doesn't mean that it's new in its entirety. Why? Because we have an earlier avatar of health humanities, which is perhaps a more popular term that is called medical humanities. In fact, the central tenets of both health humanities and medical humanities remain the same, and health humanities is actually an offshoot of medical humanities. The only difference between the two uh, is in their approach and priorities. Okay, so here we shall examine the historical development of both medical humanities and health humanities. Uh, Now, how did the term medical humanities emerge? In fact, the descriptor medical humanities was first used in 1984, to be precise, by George Sarton and Francis Siegel in an obituary column. So the term was first used in the year 1948 by Sarton and Siegel, and also as part of an obituary column. And here is another important juncture, historical juncture, that marked the development of medical humanities in the West. In 1967, Pennsylvania State Medical School established a humanities department to impart humanities education to medical students. So this is a very important historical juncture as far as the history of medical humanities as a discipline is concerned. Now, some of you might be wondering, what is the need to have humanities departments in medical colleges or medical schools? We will come to that later. In fact, 90% of the medical schools in the West do have some humanities content in their curriculum. And especially in countries such as Australia, China, Singapore, Canada, and Germany have humanities in their medical school curriculum. But as you know, in India, the situation is rather bleak. You know, India is a developing country, and we have a scarcity of resources, financial limitations. So as of now, we do not have any medical schools or colleges in India offering health humanities courses or health humanities content in their curriculum. But I really hope that at least in the coming decade, we might have at least some departments or some medical schools in India offering health humanities or at least humanities content as part of their medical curriculum. Well, moving on to another landmark in the history of medical humanities, Professor Joan Banks joined Pennsylvania State Medical School in 1972, and she became the first professor of literature to hold such a title in a medical school. So this is also a very important landmark in the history of the development of medical humanities in the West, when Professor John joined Penn State University as a professor of literature. So this is also very important historically. And now here you have an excerpt from an essay titled Wonders of Literature in Medical Education by Professor Trotman, published in the journal Mobius. And Trotman observes, I quote, using literary methods and texts, literary scholars have been teaching medical students and physicians how to listen more fully to patients' narratives of illness and how to better comprehend illness and treatment from patients' points of view. These skills help physicians to interview patients, to establish therapeutic alliances with patients and their families, to arrive at accurate diagnosis, and to choose and work toward appropriate clinical goals. Unquote. So, as it is evident here, the purpose of teaching medical humanities in medical schools is to inculcate what we call as certain doctoring skills in doctors or physicians. So, here the assumption is that by learning art and literature, doctors become more humane and empathetic towards their patients. Specifically, they learn to listen attentively to patients' narrative of illness. So, medical humanities aspires to create sensitive and empathetic physicians through a training in art and literature. So, that is the primary aim of introducing humanities content or having medical humanities departments in medical schools, because through a training in art or literature, it is expected that medical students or future physicians might have a better understanding of the patient's perspective of illness, and they also learn what we call as certain doctoring skills, and they also learn how to listen attentively to patients narratives of illness, or the patient's experience of illness, which is often marginalized in the discourse of healthcare and medicine. So that is the fundamental idea of having, or the fundamental reason why we have health humanities or medical humanities departments in medical schools in the West. In fact, our discussion of health humanities will be incomplete without a mention of narrative medicine, which is a very similar field or a movement developed in the West, more specifically in the United States. Narrative medicine is a movement pioneered by Dr. and author Rita Sharon, a practicing scholar of medicine. As a movement, narrative medicine not only challenges the authority of physicians in medical practice, but also foregrounds the voice of the patients. And this is also one of the fundamental principles of medical humanities. So, in other words, narrative medicine as a movement emphasizes the centrality of the patient's narrative of illness in medical practice. This is very, very important, because this is the fundamental concern of both narrative medicine and medical humanities as movements that prioritize the patient's perspective, or movements that foreground or emphasize the patient's perspectives of his or illness in clinical practice and treatment. So, as such, narrative medicine played a crucial role in according visibility and voice to the experience of the patients, which were hitherto marginalized in the larger discourse of healthcare and medicine. So, this is the importance of narrative medicine in the context of health humanities and medical humanities, because they, as movements or as parallel movements, they share a lot of concerns. And medical humanities is actually a movement that has been inspired by the central tenets of narrative medicine. And narrative medicine came before medical humanities and became an inspiration for this particular movement to emerge. Now we are looking at health humanities as a discourse and discipline here. And in this section, we will be looking at questions like what exactly is this field called health humanities, and how it is different from medical humanities and other similar questions. Here we have something like a definition of health humanities given by Dr. Craig Klugman and others in their book Research Methods in Health Humanities. What we have to note here is that health humanities has multiple. Could you please mute the mic?
James Joyce.
Yes, thank you.
ஐயோ, நான் நினைச்சேன் நீங்க அந்த ஷார்ட் டேர்ம் வந்து ஜாயின் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. சரி, உங்களை கேட்டுக்கலாம்னு நினைச்சேன்.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Now it's perfect. So here we have something like a definition of health humanities, and it is given by none other than Craig Klugman, who is considered an important voice in medical humanities. And it is taken from the book Research Methods in Health Humanities, published by Craig Klugman and others. And we will look at the definition, and it's not exactly a definition, but it's almost like a definition. Please pay attention to the definition given here. The health humanities draws on the methodologies of the humanities and social sciences to provide insight, understanding, and meaning to people facing illness, including professional care providers, lay care providers, patients, policymakers, and others concerned with the suffering of humans, unquote. So what we have to note here is that health humanities as a discipline or as a discourse has multiple stakeholders, including health professionals, lay care providers, patients, policymakers, and others concerned with the suffering of humans. In other words, health humanities is a discourse that views health and illness through the prism of various humanistic disciplines with multiple stakeholders. So as I had mentioned earlier, it is essential to differentiate between health humanities and medical humanities because mostly people tend to use these two terms interchangeably, although there exist some differences between the two. And the differences are pretty simple. While medical humanities uses humanities as a tool in medical education, health humanities, on the other hand, places humanities at the center. So this is the fundamental difference. In other words, medical humanities treats arts in service to medical education, while health humanities is more inclusive and has more stakeholders. So as far as students and researchers of literary studies are concerned, we are more interested in the field of health humanities rather than the field of medical humanities, because medical humanities approaches literature or arts from a very practical point of view, and medical humanities as a discipline uses arts in service to medical education practice, how to help doctors to become better physicians or better practitioners, and how art and humanities could be used as effective tools in medical education. That is the fundamental aim of medical humanities, whereas in health humanities, we place art and literature at the center of the discourse. We are not treating humanities as a mere tool in medical education, but we are looking at various issues related to health and illness from a uniquely humanistic perspective. So that is why I use the term health humanities as the title of my presentation instead of a more popular term medical humanities. So these days we tend to use the term health humanities to describe our area of research, not medical humanities. But it's fine if you use medical humanities. But technically speaking, there exists a slight difference between the two, and we as researchers of literary studies are more interested in health humanities, not medical humanities. And I hope the difference is pretty much clear now. Now, moving on to the next section, here we will be looking at some of the key words and concepts in health humanities. So, in the discourse of health humanities, the difference between illness and disease is a very fundamental thing or concept. So we tend to use both the terms illness and disease rather interchangeably. So that is the way in which it's used in common parlance. Yet there is a difference, just like medical humanities and health humanities, there is a slight difference between the term illness and the term disease. So, what is disease? Disease actually signifies a biological dysfunction and is based on signs and symptoms. In other words, disease is an objective and medically defined category. So it's a very biological kind of a term, disease. Now, what is illness? Illness, on the other hand, is the lived experience of the patient. So it should be very clear about the distinction between illness and disease. Illness is very subjective and varies from patient to patient. So, two individuals might be suffering from the same condition, say a headache or cancer or whatever it is. The experience of patient A, I mean, the lived experience, the subjective experience of patient A will be different or could be different from the subjective experience of the patient B who is suffering from the same condition. So that is the importance of the subjective experience of an illness in the discourse of health and illness. So this distinction is very clear. Disease is something that concerns the doctors or the discourse of healthcare, whereas illness is something that is uniquely personal, intimate, and subjective. And as scholars of health humanities, we are more interested in illness, not disease, because we are basically interested in the subjective experiences of illness and how it is represented across media and genres. So that is something that concerns us, while physicians or doctors are more concerned about the disease part of a particular condition. We are most interested in the illness aspect of it. So that is something that interests uh, us as researchers or scholars of health humanities. And we are moving on to another key term in health humanities, that is pathography. This is also a very fundamental concept in health humanities. In simple terms, pathography is an autobiographical or biographical narrative on the experience of illness. So, and pathographies may be categorized as patient-produced pathographies, caregiver narratives, and narratives authored by medical practitioners. So, in simple terms, a pathography is an autobiographical or biographical narrative on the experience of illness. It is often or mostly written by the patient herself, but we do have narratives authored by caregivers, those who take care of the patients, like family members or nurses and others. And then we also have narratives or pathographies on illness authored by medical practitioners based on their own experience of treating patients. So the pathographies could be categorized into three. Okay, so here I have given some examples of pathographies. The first one, tangles, is a pathography authored by Sarah Levitt, and this is a narrative based on Sarah's experience of giving care to her mother who is suffering from Alzheimer's. So this is a caregiver narrative, the first category of pathographies. The next one is titled Taking Turns, and this is authored by M.K. Servick. And this is a narrative in which the author happens to be a nurse taking care of HIV patients in a hospital. So this could be categorized a narrative produced by a medical practitioner. So that is the second category of pathographies. And then finally, we have narratives authored by patients themselves. And a good example would be When Breath Became Air, authored by Paul Kalanithi. I'm sure some of you have come across this particular narrative because it's based on the life of a cancer, a surgeon who used to practice in the US, in a hospital in the US. And he's basically from India. He's from Tamil Nadu. But this is not based on his experience of treating people, but rather it is based on his experience as a cancer patient. Dr. Kalanidhi got diagnosed with cancer, and then he wrote this particular memoir. And immediately after the publication of this particular memoir, which chronicles his cancer journey, Dr. Kalanidhi passed away. So this particular narrative is a good example of a narrative authored by the patient himself, and it also happens to be a narrative authored by a doctor. So these are the ways through which we could categorize pathographies, and pathography is a very important uh, term or a key term in health humanities and medical humanities. Moving on to the next section of the presentation, research in health humanities. These are some of the research themes or areas of inquiry in health humanities. As scholars of health humanities, as scholars of literature or people who are interested in literary studies, we are primarily interested in the question of representation, because literature or arts in general is all about representation, how a particular theme gets represented, how a particular social group gets represented in novels, in movies, or in paintings. These are all things that concern us as literary scholars. So when it comes to health humanities, we are primarily interested in the question of representation, how uh, uh, health and illness get represented across genres and media, including novels, movies, paintings, comics, and so on and so forth. So we are primarily interested in the question of representation, and we have many scholars doing their PhDs looking at how a particular condition, say cancer or AIDS or any other condition, how it gets represented in novels or in movies or in paintings or in drama, or I mean, you can choose any genre or literary form for that matter. So, representation is a very important topic in health humanities, especially for scholars from literary studies. Then, of course, the question of medical ethics uh, also comes up. How, I mean, medical ethics in the sense that uh, issue how narratives discuss issues such as medical negligence and apathy. This is something that concerns us because, as students of humanities, we are primarily interested in the question of justice and how justice is being denied, or we are also, trying to achieve what we call as a just society, and that is one of the fundamental aims of having humanities as a component in our curriculum. So the question of medical ethics is also something that concerns us as medical humanities or health humanities scholars. After that comes health, equity, social justice, accessibility of healthcare, and similar other issues. Because accessibility or question of health justice is something very, very important as far as health humanities is concerned. Questions such as who gets access to uh, good health care is something that uh, we always grapple with, because issues such as inequality, lack of access to quality healthcare, the question of health injustice, the commercialization and privatization of healthcare, how healthcare has reduced how healthcare uh, has become something like uh, uh, a profit machine for multinational corporations. And these are all things that concern us as health humanities scholars. So, the question of health equity and social justice and accessibility of healthcare is something that is very, very important in the discourse of health humanities. Next is digital health. This is a very unique and emerging subfield of um, health humanities. So, what is digital health humanities? Digital health humanities is actually an emerging area within health humanities where we look at health and illness as represented in digital environments, say Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and other similar platforms. And there we will be looking at the discussions or discourses on illness and health. You know what is going on social media, and this is perhaps a field where the discipline of health humanities intersects with the discipline of digital humanities. I'm sure you have a session on digital humanities, so you could see an intersection of these two disciplines here in digital health humanities. And then, of course, we have a health in relation to Foucauldian notions such as biopower and medical gaze. I'm sure you have, or at least some of you have come across this Foucauldian notion of the medical gaze, which Foucault has detailed in his seminal text titled The Birth of the Clinic. So, medical gaze is an important concern. What is medical gaze? Medical gaze, in simple terms, is how this is a concept that describes how a patient is reduced to the status of an object under the all pervasive gaze of the doctor, how is reduced to the status of a docile body in the clinic, and how, just like the male gaze, something that has been theorized by people like Laura Mulvey in the context of film studies and feminism. We have something like medical gaze theorized by none other than Michel Foucault. So there also we are interested in the question of power. What is the status? What is the subject position of a patient in the context of a clinic? How he gets reduced to the status of a mere object of medical scrutiny or medical gaze. And so we are always interested in the question of what you call doctor-patient relationship in medical practice, and how there is an imbalance of power as far as the medical encounter is concerned, because the physician or the doctor has a lot of power in the discourse, where the voice of the patient is often pushed to the margins of the discourse of healthcare and medicine. So we are definitely interested in the Foucauldian notions such as biopower and medical gaze. And this is a very important concern when we look at look at our pandemic experience and how governments across the globe try to control people's health, people's behavior, and that is one of the instances where the question of biopower or biogovernmentality, to use another term which more or less conveys the same idea, becomes very, very, very significant. And finally, we have health in relation to race, gender, sexuality, and so on. And then, because the experience of health or the experience of illness is different for a male and a female. And if you're a transgender person, or if you're a gay or a lesbian, your access to healthcare will be a little different from that of a heterosexual white male. So there you bring in the idea of intersectionality, how intersectionality becomes a very important concern as far as your experience of health and illness is concerned as an individual. So we are of course interested in the question of intersectionality in relation to race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, geography, because access to healthcare will be very different for somebody in India, and it will be entirely a different experience for somebody in the United States. So, as part of a research fellowship, I was in the US 2 years back, and there I could understand that health is something that is, or good healthcare is something that is unaffordable to an average US citizen. It's not like the health systems in India, which is not that privatized, because in the United States, the entire health sector is managed, or rather mismanaged by private players. And if you do not have a good insurance in the United States, you are not going to get good healthcare, no matter how rich you are. So geography or your place of birth uh, and your race, gender, sexuality, religion, and all these factors shape your experience of illness. So we are also interested in health and intersectionality. And finally, we come to the question of health humanities and inclusion. What is health humanities? I mean, how significant is the question of inclusion in the discourse of health humanities? There we discuss themes like LGBTQI plus, I mean, the experience of health and illness for sexual minorities, and then of course we have other themes such as ableism and health, human rights, and similar other issues. So there we discuss themes such as medical negligence. Every day you come across news that um, portray the plight of a patient um, as a result of medical negligence. And so these are all issues that we commonly discuss within the umbrella term of health humanities. Of course, with research comes publication. These are some of the finest journals that publish health humanities related research. These are only a few examples. There are numerous other journals that publish health humanities or medical humanities related content or research articles. The first example that I have given here is the British Medical Journal, which is a very reputed and respected journal in health humanities, and it is published by British Medical Association. The second journal I have given here is Literature and Medicine, published by Johns Hopkins University, and this is one of the earliest journals to publish research related to literature and medicine. So this is a journal that might interest people working in literary studies and related fields. And then we have the Journal of Medical Humanities published by Springer. And then this is also a well-respected journal. And finally, we have Perspectives in Biology and Medicine, published by, again, by Johns Hopkins University Press. And I have been fortunate enough to publish a couple of my articles in both Journal of Medical Humanities and Perspectives in Biology and Medicine. And if you Google, you could see a lot of other journals as well. And if you are working uh, in the field of literature and medicine or health humanities, you could also publish your articles in journals that generally publish literature related articles, because health humanities is an intersection of arts and the discourse of medicine. So you could naturally publish your articles in literary journals or journals that focus on literature as well. And here is a list of international research centers that focus on health humanities related research. In Durham University, we have a Center for Medical Humanities that focuses on medical humanities related research. And again, in the United Kingdom, you have Center for the Humanities and Health at King's College, London. This is a very reputed health humanities center in London. Then we have the Center for Medical Humanities in University of Leeds. Uh, Now, in the United States, you have the Institute of the Medical Humanities at the University of Texas Medical Branch. Then we have another important medical humanities center uh, at Yale University School of Medicine, titled Medical Humanities and the Arts. Then Duke Global Institute has got a Duke University has got its own health humanities or medical humanities branch or division called Duke Global Health Institute. And again, in Stanford, in Stanford University, we have a Stanford Center for Biomedical Ethics, which specifically looks at um, health ethics or medical ethics as an important subfield of medical humanities. And this is not an exhaustive list, especially in countries like the US and UK. You have numerous medical humanities research centers and institutes. uh, uh, in Boston, for instance, we have a wonderful um, institute called Harvard Medical School, and this is actually part of Harvard University. And they do cutting edge research related to health humanities and medical humanities. And I was fortunate enough to talk about my book, Infertility Comics and Graphic Medicine, last year at Harvard Medical School Library. And there are also other schools in cities like Boston. And there is another important medical school, health university called Massachusetts College of Health Sciences. And I was a visiting research fellow at the Center for Health Humanities at Massachusetts College of Health Sciences. And you have numerous fellowships on uh, you have numerous fellowships that you could apply for if you are a health humanities researcher. And I was a fellow in this particular center. So you have numerous research avenues, research issues, research topics, and research funding as far as research in health humanities is concerned. Uh, Now, we are moving on to the final part of my presentation. Here, as I have mentioned in the beginning, that we are looking at a particular subfield of subfield of health humanities called graphic medicine. It is a very recently emerged subfield of medical humanities. So, what is graphic medicine? Graphic medicine arguably represents what we call as a visual turn in the discourse of health humanities. So, what we are trying to say is that when you look at the trajectory of the development of health humanities in the West, you see that there is a visual turn in this particular discourse. And what do we mean by the visual turn in health or medical humanities? We will examine that particular aspect in the coming slides. So, art historian Fiona Johnston describes the visual turn in health humanities. Thus, I quote, the medical humanities have recently taken a visual turn. The visual has been welcomed as one possible alternative to narrative's long-standing dominance in the medical humanities, and scholars from a range of disciplines are becoming increasingly alert to the affective, communicative, and critical possibilities offered by a sustained engagement with visual materials, unquote. Here, as you can see, uh, Dr. Johnston argues how the scholars in medical humanities have become increasingly aware of the affective, communicative, and critical possibilities offered by visual materials. So, the field of medical humanities itself has taken what we call a visual turn, recognizing the power of images in health humanities discourse. So, this is the significance of the visual turn, because there is a point, or there was a point where health humanities scholars recognize the potential or power of the visual, how central visual can be, or how useful a tool visual could be in the discourse of health and medical humanities. And that is a point when health humanities or medical humanities took what you call a visual turn. And that is why Fiona Johnston has written a manifesto for visual medical humanities. Now, coming back to graphic medicine as a movement or as a discipline or as a interdisciplinary field, uh, the field of graphic medicine, or as a movement, it was inaugurated in the year 2007 by a group of medical practitioners and scholars from UK and the United States. The term graphic medicine was coined by a physician from UK, Dr. Ian Williams. Now, what is graphic medicine? In simple terms, graphic medicine is an interdisciplinary field that meshes the concerns of comics and medicine. I repeat, graphic medicine is an interdisciplinary field within health humanities that meshes the concerns of comics and medicine, or comics or healthcare. Here we have a definition of graphic medicine given by one of the founding members of the graphic medicine movement. And this definition is given by M.K. Servick. The definition goes like this, I quote, graphic medicine is the intersection of the medium of comics and the discourse of healthcare. I repeat, graphic medicine is the intersection of the medium of comics and the discourse of healthcare, quote unquote. To simplify further, I would say graphic medicine is an interdisciplinary field which is chiefly concerned about the representation of health and illness in comics and graphic narratives. I'll repeat the quote for you. My simplified definition of graphic medicine. Graphic medicine is an interdisciplinary field which is chiefly concerned about the representation of health and illness in comics and graphic narratives. So this is a simplified definition of graphic medicine. So just like in health humanities, in graphic medicine research and activism, we are primarily interested in pathographies. But there is a difference between the pathographies that you see in health humanities and the pathographies that you specifically examine in the discourse of graphic medicine. So in graphic medicine, we are interested in a particular form of pathographies called graphic pathographies. In simple terms, we are interested in pathographies that offer a graphic description of the subject matter. So, graphic pathographies could be defined as illness narratives in graphic form. This is the difference between general pathographies and graphic pathographies. General pathographies are usually verbal narratives, while graphic pathographies are visual narratives and mostly comics. So, in graphic medicine, we are primarily interested in what we call graphic pathography. So just like regular or general pathographies, graphic pathographies are mostly autobiographical and patient-produced and may be categorized as physical illness narratives, mental illness narratives, and disability narratives. This is a categorization that we could do apart from the categorization of pathographies that we discussed earlier into pathographies produced by patients, pathographies produced by caregivers, and pathographies produced by doctors or medical practitioners. Here we are talking about a different kind of categorization where we categorize pathographies into physical illness narratives, mental illness narratives, and disability narratives. And this categorization in itself could be a little problematic in the sense that these days or lately, scholars have recognized the fact that you cannot differentiate or you cannot categorize your illness experience into physical, mental, or disability related, because every physical illness has got a psychological component. So you cannot categorize them as watertight compartments. But for the sake of convenience, we could categorize them as physical illness narratives, mental illness narratives, and disability narratives. So I have given some examples here. Look at the first example. The first example is a graphic memoir titled Marbles, authored by cartoonist and comics creator Ellen Forney. And this is a narrative based on Ellen Forney's own experience of navigating bipolar disorder. So this could be categorized as a mental illness narrative. And then we have a narrative titled The Bad Doctor. Um, the Bad Doctor is actually authored by Ian Williams, who is one of the founding members of the graphic medicine movement. And this is a narrative where a doctor sees himself as a patient, because you look at the title, the bad doctor. So here he is ready to shed his aura of being a doctor, and he sees himself through the eyes of a patient, and he also sees himself as a patient who is suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. So here we have a very decentered or a unique perspective of illness, which is given by the doctor himself. And he sees himself as a patient, and he's talking about his own failures and vulnerabilities as a doctor. And he also sees himself as a patient of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And this is also another, I mean, this is also a narrative which could be categorized as a mental illness narrative. And finally, you have a Mom's Cancer, authored by a comics creator, Brian Feast. This is also a comic produced in the United States. And this is a canonical text in graphic medicine, and it is one of the uh, earliest texts in graphic medicine. And this is a narrative where author Brian Feast is talking about his experience of giving care to his terminally ill mother who was suffering from cancer. So this is basically a caregiver narrative, and this could also be categorized as a physical illness narrative. This is because it's basically about cancer, which is primarily identified or understood as a physical condition. Now, uh, here we have some of the major practitioners of graphic medicine. The first one is Dr. Ian Williams. We just mentioned his name in the earlier slides. He's a physician and comics artist from UK, and he launched the graphic medicine website in 2007, which technically inaugurated the very field of graphic medicine. And another important figure in graphic medicine is Dr. Susan M. Squire. She's a professor of English and Women's Studies at Penn State University, United States. And she has written extensively on medical humanities, women's health, feminism, and graphic medicine. The third person here is Dr. Michael Green. He who is a physician and researcher at Penn State College of Medicine, and he is a pioneer in using comics to teach medical students. And finally, we have M.K. Servick, who is a nurse by profession, and she is currently an artist in residence at Northwestern School of Medicine, United States. And she has also authored a graphic memoir based on her own experience of taking care of the patients as a nurse, titled Taking Turns, Stories from HIV or AIDS Care, published in 2017. And she's also known by the pen name Comic Nurse. Yes. Now, from there we move on to the question of why why people draw comics and create graphic memoirs on illness. So this is a question that usually arises as to why people draw comics based on their experience of illness and suffering, and we can give several reasons. The primary reason being, drawing about illness is an effective way to externalize physical pain and mental trauma. So we often come across this idea that writing, drawing, or creativity could be very therapeutic and cathartic. So people suffering from various conditions usually find it very cathartic or therapeutic to write about it, to draw that particular experience. And that is the primary reason why people draw about their experience of illness. And so drawing about illness is an effective way to externalize physical pain and mental trauma. And of course, there is a concern for others as well, because if you draw about your personal experience of illness, such drawing could be of help to others who are trying to cope with and navigate similar experiences. So what is possible is your narrative or your drawing on which is based on your experience of illness uh, could could create a community of sufferers, which would make people feel less alone in their battles with illness conditions. Suppose I suffer from a condition and I write a memoir about it, just like Paul Kalanidhi or others wrote about their own experiences. Others who go through a similar crisis might find it very encouraging, very therapeutic, and they might feel that they are not alone in their struggles with a particular illness condition. So it has a very altruistic.
Dear participants, kindly wait. The resource person will join again. We have some technical problems. Kindly wait. Sir, your slide is visible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry for the disruption.
Okay, sir.
So we were addressing the question why people draw, and I mean we have discussed the first few points, and so these are some of the reasons why people draw based on their experience of illness. So drawing has a therapeutic and cathartic potential, which would definitely empower the artist in their struggles with illness and suffering. So this could be empowering for the artist herself, and it could also empower and support others who are struggling with various illness conditions. So drawing actually has multiple benefits for the writer and also for others. Now, from authorship, we come to the question of readership of graphic pathographies. Who reads graphic pathographies or graphic medicine narratives? Thomas Kuser, who is a well-known Thomas Kuser, who is a well-known medical humanities theorist, identifies four concentric circles of readers for illness narratives. They are, I quote, those who are ill, those who are at risk, those who are caregivers, and those who are bereaved. So these are the four categories of readers identified by Dr. Thomas Kuser, who is a well-known autobiographic theorist and medical humanities practitioner. And now, apart from the four categories of readers identified by Thomas Kuser, we also have literary scholars like us who are interested in graphic medicine or graphic pathographies. And then we have comic scholars, nurses, doctors, medical students, and other actors in medical care. And another category would be medical illustrators and biomedical communication researchers. They are all interested in graphic medicine narratives or graphic pathographies. And finally, we have academic medicine scholars, people from the discipline of medicine, the so-called doctors or researchers in medicine. They will also be interested in reading these narratives. So these are some of the categories of readers who might be interested in graphic narratives on illness and medicine. And of course, there might be other readership categories as well. What I have done is I have identified a few constituencies or a few important readership categories who could be interested in reading graphic narratives. And now we will be looking at some of the major themes or concerns in graphic medicine. The first is, of course, patient identity. How? Because when you become a patient, you are no longer the individual you used to be. And this is a concern that is shared by all writers of graphic medicine and all narratives of graphic medicine. Because when you are ill, your fundamental identity, your primary subjectivity undergoes a transformation. You become a sick person and you will look at yourself in a different way, and others will look at you as a patient. And your primary identity of being a patient could be very, very uh, uh, disturbing or destabilizing for you as an individual. So the question of patient identity, how do you grapple with the identity of being a patient, is something graphic medicine is primarily interested in. So that is a major theme in graphic medicine narratives. Then medical negligence, just like medical humanities in general, we are interested in issues related to medical negligence and other similar concerns. The third concern would be doctor-patient relationship. There are narratives which focus exclusively on a particular patient's experience of illness inside a clinic and how a particular doctor or a nurse or a group of medical practitioners treat a particular patient. So doctor-patient relationship is an important concern of graphic medicine. So I have done my research in a particular category of graphic narratives called infertility comics, where I was primarily looking at the representation of women's infertility in graphic narratives. So when I had a chance to go through those narratives, what I found was uh, almost all the authors found their clinical experience of infertility going or undergoing treatment like in vitro fertilization, IVF, could be very depersonalizing and estranging for them. So that is a context in which the question of your relationship with the doctor, the way he treats you, uh, is he treating you as an individual, or is he treating you as an object to be studied, or an object to be experimented upon? So these are all issues that come under the term doctor-patient relationship. So this is also an equally important theme in graphic medicine narratives. Now, challenges of caregiving. When you are giving care to somebody, it could be a very daunting task, not just for you, but also for the patient. Because if somebody is taking care of you, you might not be comfortable because the kind of pain that they had to endure, or the kind of sacrifices that they might have to do in terms of their personal and professional um, lives, could be very disturbing for you as a patient. And I don't know whether you have come across this movie, The Father, which uh, became a very, critically acclaimed movie 2 years back in the Oscars, and in which, uh, and this is a movie in which um, Sir Anthony Hopkins plays the character of Alzheimer's patient. And this movie is not just about the struggles of the patient, and it is also more about the struggles of his daughter, who gives care to her elderly father who is struggling with Alzheimer's. So, caregiving could be a very challenging task. And it becomes more problematic in countries like the United States, where you cannot uh, simply afford a nurse or a home nurse to take care of your elderly parents, because it's simply unaffordable. And I have many friends in the US um, who confided to me that it is technically impossible for them to take care of their uh, parents because it's not financially viable. So what they do is they are taking um, a break from their career, and then they are taking care of their parents. So this is the difficulty of caregiving, and this is definitely a challenging task. So there are narratives, just like Brian Fee's Mom's Cancer, which look at the challenges of caregiving from a caregiver's perspective. And then industrialization and commercialization of healthcare is a very, very important issue today. And I have written an article which looks at the commercialization of healthcare in the United States, and how it became a very profit-driven uh, um, uh, enterprise, and how it becomes very detrimental for ordinary citizens of United States. And so industrialization and commercialization of healthcare, and the impact of private insurance on the illness experience of ordinary American citizens is something that I have examined in one of my articles. So this is a very important theme in many of the graphic medicine narratives that we read. And of course, there are other themes like alternative discourses of illness and healing, like yoga, acupuncture, Unani, and similar other alternative discourses of illness and healing. There are several narratives that you look at indigenous treatment practices like Ayurveda and its impact on the patients, and how it is different from Western medicine, and how treatment practices like Ayurveda could be uh, um, more effective and less estranging for certain patients. So these are all, I mean, graphic medicine narratives more or less touch upon almost all the themes that are significant in the context of healthcare, medicine, and patients' experience of health and illness. I would like to sum up the scope of graphic medicine as a movement, or also as a field. Graphic medicine has the potential to enlighten various stakeholders in healthcare about the complexities of practicing medicine and experiencing illness. This is a very important aspect of graphic medicine. It also enables scholars to examine various issues in relation to health and illness, and this is something that we have discussed in the earlier slides. And graphic pathographies as narratives serve as an effective tool in medical education and training, and this is where graphic medicine becomes an important tool in medical humanities. How it becomes a very effective tool in patient care or medical education. So it could be used as an effective tool in medical practice or medical education. So in sum, graphic medicine could be identified as a unique movement within the discourse of medical or health humanities that offers myriad possibilities to engage with health and illness in different ways. So I hope you got a general idea regarding what graphic medicine is as a field and how significant is graphic medicine in the context of the visual turn in medical and health humanities. And perhaps graphic medicine is the most popular subfield of health humanities. Today, a lot of scholars are doing research in graphic medicine, and there is also renewed interest in medical humanities in the West, where they look at graphic medicine narratives written by patients and caregivers. And we also have graphic medicine narratives from countries like Spain, Japan, and Italy. So it is a very emerging or a discourse. And it's so, as far as research in health humanities is concerned, graphic medicine is perhaps the most sought after domain within literary studies with a focus on health humanities or medical humanities. With that, I would like to conclude my lecture, and thank you for my patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your lecture.
Thank you.
Now I invite Dr. Pramila Andarasi to propose the vote of thanks. So before that, we have question and answer session. Participants, if you have any doubts, you can ask and he will clarify your questions. Dear participant, now you can unmute your mics and ask questions.
So how do we go about it? Can I answer these questions? I've seen a few questions here in the chat box.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I think we have a couple of questions here in the chat box. There is a question from Maria, right? Yes. Can you explain about the politics on so-called third world countries by first world nations in health and medicine? And Maria is a research scholar from Sri Parashakti College for Women. Thank you, Maria, for that question. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting question because as third world countries or people from the third world countries, our experience of illness and health is very much mediated by what we call as Western medicine. Because the treatment practices that we have, or heavily priced drugs that we get from the West, and even the way in which you prioritize Western medicine over our indigenous treatment practices are symptomatic of the ways through which the West wields a control over the health and illness of the people of the third world countries. And so is the case with multinational insurance companies who also play a significant role in the third world. So, be it about the availability of expensive drugs from the West, or heavily priced drugs from the West, or the way in which we have to rely on Western medical equipments which are not currently available in our country, or and this becomes all the more difficult and very all the more complex in countries in Africa, because there the situation is rather bleak. They cannot afford proper treatments, and they have to get the medicines from the West because their laboratories are not well equipped to produce produce medicines for themselves. So this is going to be a very challenging task. What you call as a Western hegemony in medicine and healthcare could be seen in third world countries. So this is something that countries like India is trying to manage, because there are several policy frameworks adopted by the central government, which make an attempt to produce such expensive drugs indigenously, and there are certain Indian pharmaceutical companies which are producing similar drugs, and even in the context of the COVID pandemic, and when it comes to vaccination. Initially, we were forced to rely on, or we were at the mercy of Western vaccine companies for vaccines, but later on we were able to have a collaboration with a company in UK, and we were one of the first countries to produce an indigenous vaccine, or a vaccine that we produce with a collaborative arrangement with a company abroad. So there are certain attempts from the part of the government, from the part of the system, to make us less dependent on the first world, but still we have a long way to go. I hope I answered the question, Maria. Can I move on to the next question? So here we have another question. So what made you become interested in medical humanities? And this is a question that I usually answer during my presentation, because there will be somebody asking this particular question, and this is a natural question to ask. As an undergraduate student, I was interested in narratives on illness, because there is something very universal about your experience of illness. You look at other categories or other identities, such as other social or cultural categories that shape your identity, say gender, say caste, say religion, say ethnicity, say, geography. These are all things that divide people. These are all things that shape your identity as an individual. But as a male, I might not be able to identify with the issues faced by a woman. And as somebody from India, I might not be able to, or a brown person from India, I might not be able to fully identify with the plight of a black man in the United States. So, although these are all categories that could shape one's identity, there is a limitation when it comes to identifying with these categorizations, with this multitude of identities. But what is unique about the experience of illness is it is something universal, unlike any other identity or subject possession. Males, females, blacks, whites, transgenders, heterosexuals, everyone has to experience illness in one way or the other. So there is something uniquely universal about the experience of illness, unlike any other experience for that matter. So this is something that piqued my interest. So I was always interested in illness narratives as a young undergraduate. But then I didn't know that there existed a field like medical humanities, or in India, nobody even thought much about medical humanities then. And gradually, after completion of my PG, I started to seriously think about research. And then I thought health humanities, and then I stumbled on this particular domain. And then I found it really interesting. I read about it. And as part of my PhD research, I decided to focus on health humanities. And with the support of my research supervisor, who was also somebody deeply interested in health humanities, Professor Satyaraj Venkateshan from NIT Trichy, I was able to identify an area called graphic medicine where I focus my research. So this is my research journey as far as the field of medical humanities is concerned. I hope the answer is clear to you. And this question was asked by Dr. Rama Jayalakshmi.
It's new actually. Okay, but the zip has been.
Sorry? Sorry? I think your voice is breaking. Could you please repeat? Do we have her with us? Okay, so do we have any other questions? You flow of thought is silent.
No, there is a question in chat box.
What is that, ma'am?
Can you give some theories based on health and medical humanities? One Mrs. Priyadarshini has asked this question.
Okay, theories based on, can you give some theories based on health and medical humanities? Okay, of course. When you look at graphic medicine as a field, it is the intersection of three different fields of research. One is definitely comic studies. Then we have health humanities. And finally, we have autobiography studies. So this is a unique field where these three subfields intersect. So what we do in health humanities research is you use the theories of autobiography studies like the self, the other, how you represent the self in narratives, and how you visually represent the self, and theories related to visual representation of self and your subjectivity, things related to autobiography as a field. And you could also use theories related to comic studies. for instance, autobiographical representation of the sick body in comics, and how do you talk about embodiment in relation to comics, the relationship between body and representation. How do you represent your body? And if you are doing research on mental illness, you can look at issues like how Foucault, for instance, has talked about how society constructs the mentally ill. He has written a book. What was that book? On and it's not coming. Yes, I mean, Foucault has talked about, just like the birth of the clinic, he has talked about the ways in which society constructs the idea of an insane person, and how your mental illness becomes a social or cultural category. So you could bring in insights like Foucault's in your analysis of mental illness narratives in health humanities. And then if you talk about theories of health and illness as such in health humanities, we have theorists like Arthur Frank, who has written a book called The Wounded Storyteller. The Wounded Storyteller by Arthur Frank. And then there is another book by Susan Sontag, where she talks about the use of metaphors in literary narratives, how you use metaphors to talk about your illness experience. So you can use Sontag, you can use people like Arthur Frank and their approaches to health and illness. And then, of course, you could also bring in issues of gender, because when I was doing my research in infertility, I mean, in the field of infertility studies, looking at graphic narratives on fertility, you could also bring in gender theories, because you are talking about a very gendered experience like infertility. Because if you're, I mean, if the couple go through infertility, even if the problem is with the male partner, the female partner had to undergo all the treatments. So this is a very gendered kind of a condition, and the plight of the female patients within the infertility clinic is also something that is very important in the context of infertility comics. So I could also bring in theories of gender. So even if you are doing research in the field of health humanities, you can bring in theories related to gender. You can bring in theories related to literature, comics, visual narratives, and all that. And of course, you could also use, and there are narratives like Macho Medicine. This is a title of a book, Macho Medicine, where the author is talking about how masculine and how gendered a discourse medicine is. So there also you connect gender and medicine, and gender and the discourse of medicine. And these are all some of the ways through which we could bring in different theoretical perspectives, different theoretical tools from related disciplines in your analysis of texts in medical humanities. I think I answered your question, right? Do we have any other question?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Could you suggest, okay, is intersectionality positive or negative? What impact does it create in the society? And this is a question by Dr. Raja, no, it's by Supriya M, right? Yes. So intersectionality is an approach, or this a particular theoretical perspective which argues that, especially in the context of illness, this particular approach or this particular concept argues that your experience of illness is invariably shaped by uh, intersectionality, like your gender, your caste, your sexuality, and similar other categories. So there is no escape from the question of intersectionality, because you experience illness as a subject, and you will definitely experience illness as a subject, as a unique individual because your identity is something very different from that of another person. If you are a male, your experience inside a clinic will be totally different from that of a female. And if you are a black person, your access to healthcare in a country like the United States is very much different from a white heterosexual male. And if you are a transgender person, um, you might have difficulty accessing healthcare in any country for that matter. So intersectionality is a very important component in health humanities, or it's not just in health humanities. If you are analyzing any literary narrative or any cultural artifact, you have in which you have a human component, you have to take into account the intersectional aspects of his or her experiences. So there is no point talking about whether intersectionality is positive or negative. It is a reality, and it often has a negative impact on minority communities, women, sexual minorities, blacks, and the like. So intersectionality is something that is inseparable from uh, um, health humanities or medical humanities. You cannot have a study of a text without taking into account the intersectional aspects of that particular narrative or the intersectional aspects of that narrator or protagonist, whatever or whoever it is. Now, moving on to the next question. Could you suggest any Indian writers or other Asian writers who focus on health humanities in their works? Is a question given by Supriya. Yeah. Are you talking about? Okay. I think what you have in mind is narratives from India that focus on health-related content. I hope that is your question. Of course, we have many verbal narratives on different illness conditions written by writers from India, and even films. We have numerous films talking about different illness experiences. And unfortunately, we do not have many graphic medicine narratives or comics narratives talking about uh, the experience of illness. So that is a shortcoming, and I think at least in the near future we will have some narratives from India or South Asia which focus on the experience of illness, and which are written in a in the written using the medium of comics. As of now, we do not have any comics narratives from India on health or illness, but there is another category of narratives called health education comics. Health education comics are a little different from graphic medicine. The difference is pretty simple. Health education comics are simple drawings that you get from healthcare facilities given by volunteers and others who are part of the healthcare system to educate you about a particular illness condition, about sanitation and things like that. These are simple drawings which are not based on any personal experience. These are not subjective enunciations, but these narratives could not be categorized as graphic medicine narratives. Graphic medicine narratives are very complex drawings authored by creators, which are mostly based on their own experience of going through different conditions. So in India or in Asia, we have many health education comics, which make an attempt to educate or enlighten people about various illness conditions. But such leaflets or such texts could not be categorized as narratives. And if you just Google, you will get a lot of narratives on different illness conditions from India. Recently, a writer, an author from Kerala has written an interesting narrative on infertility. She's a Malayali. And the title of the narrative is "What is a lemon squeezer doing in my vagina?" That is the title of the narrative. And this is basically based on Roshmi Rajagopal's own experience of undergoing infertility treatment in various clinics in Kerala. And so we have, and Paul Kalanidhi himself is a Tamilian by birth. So even his narrative, when Breath Becomes Air, could be categorized as a narrative from authored by somebody hailing from India or South Asia. And we have numerous verbal narratives. We do have many verbal narratives, but visual narratives are very limited. And we barely have anything now in the field of graphic medicine. Any other question? Okay. Okay, so this is also a good question raised by Captain Dr. K. Said Ali. Can we bring in gerontology under medical humanities? Definitely. Aging or age-related ailments, even dementia for that matter, is often treated as a um, age-related condition. So, how aging becomes an important aspect of your health, how it affects your quality of life, and the difficulties faced by the elderly. Uh, these are all things that might interest somebody from, from health humanities background. So definitely in health humanities, you can look at gerontology, and you can categorize gerontology under medical humanities. That is pretty much possible. And there are many graphic narratives on aging in graphic medicine. So those narratives could be studied under the umbrella term of gerontology, and this is a place where gerontology and the discipline of medical humanities intersect. That's a good question. Yes, it is. It is pretty much possible to bring in gerontology under medical humanities. Yes. So there is another question regarding my PhD topic. Yes, I was looking at infertility narratives as part of my PhD research, and I was specifically looking at the representation of women's infertility and graphic medicine. And based on my PhD research, I have authored a book published by Routledge in 2021, and I think that I think the book is available online. And if you wish to read the book, I am ready to send you a soft copy. You can email me your queries if you have any, and I'm ready to share resources, or if you need my book for reference, I'm more than happy to share it with you. Thank you. Thank you. Great session. Can we bring neurodegenerative diseases in literature? Definitely, you can bring in neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's, uh, Parkinson's. That is pretty much possible. And when you look at narratives in graphic medicine, at least 20 to 30% of narratives focus on neurodegenerative diseases. And we also have narratives on conditions like epilepsy. We have a narrative called Epileptic, authored by a writer from France, and his name is David B. So that is pretty much neurodegenerative diseases. Yeah, those narratives in literature also, that is possible. Yeah, in literature, if you have verbal narratives on neurodegenerative diseases, that could be treated as medical humanities research, and you can use the tools and techniques of in medical humanities to examine or analyze such texts. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I shall share the book with you. Please email me. Okay. I shall send you a soft copy of the book. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I can share my email ID here. Please note. So I have shared my email ID in the chat box. So if you have any questions, or if you need any clarifications, or if you need my book, feel free to email me. Any other questions or responses? Thank you all for your generous comments. It is very heartening, and I hope the session was very useful, and I'm happy that you had many questions. Yes, thank you. I hope you had a very interesting session. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I have shared my mail ID. Please check the chat box.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying the doubts of the participants and your wonderful presentation. And your speech is really inspiring, and you have made it clear, especially the field of graphic medicine. And it's wonderful. And it's a new area of research for all of us. And you have made everything very clear and explicit. Thank you, sir. It's time for the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I thank God Almighty for His presence and guidance throughout this third day online faculty development program. I thank our Secretary, Mr. S. Prem Kumar Rajasingh, and our Principal in Charge, Dr. G.V. Esther Ratnakumari, for their encouragement and support in organizing this faculty development program. I sincerely thank today's resource person, Dr. Chinmay Murali, for his informative and in-depth speech on health humanities. Sir, your speech is very interesting and inspiring too. And you have motivated us to do research in this area. And your speech based on your experiences as a visiting professor in Boston University and your research articles and publications, it's really wonderful and it's really amazing, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation. Further, I would like to thank the convener, coordinator, organizing secretaries, and the organizing committee for their enthusiastic and energetic involvement in making this FDP a grand success. I express my sincere gratitude to the treasured participants of this faculty development program. It is your presence that cheers us to go forward. Thank you so much. Thank you, one and all.
So let me take this opportunity to thank you everyone for this wonderful opportunity. I'm especially thankful to the organizers of this FDP, and I had a great time discussing graphic medicine and health humanities with you all. Thanks again for this great opportunity. Looking forward to meeting you all. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.